It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We're reviewing the 30 best momentum companies over the last quarter, and then the companies that have had the best improvement in the last week, what we call the launch pad. Gary Glover's been through these 30-30 lists, pulled out his favourite charts, and is going to walk us through the best ones to look at. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris.
We've had a nice break. We're back from it. We're ready to jump into it. And you've got a crashing chart in front of it. So what's that one and which list is that from?
Yeah, so that's actually number one on the list, actually 40S, which is sort of like in that memory sort of space there. So if anyone sort of follows Dub Money in the States there, they would have been following some of the semiconductor chips a couple of weeks ago. There was talk of a big breakthrough there, which didn't end up being the case there. But I think American semiconductors there, the stock might have doubled in a short period of time. But I know 40S reasonably well, actually. So it's a stock that's been sort of, I think it's basically been funded by Western Digital, which is a sort of big, memory company there. But they've literally did all the research there. So I've been a long time here, a lot of money pumped into this one here, but looks like they've sort of had a bit of a breakthrough here recently. And obviously the shares had a run there from 3 cents up to sort of 6 or 7, then had their news come out and pop up here. So it's had a bit of a retreat now, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on here, just because there's been a lot of talk, chatter in this space here, sort of semiconductor space. So this is sort of the 40S is sort of, I think it's like a nano sort of memory, and it's sort of like it's all about heat, and so I think they sort of 40S are sort of trying to work on obviously smaller and lighter and less sort of less conduction, I guess, in there, but still being able to conduct memory and stuff there. So interesting space. Had a bit of a pop here. I think it's a bit of a watch and see here, but definitely one of those stocks that sort of had a big move here. And I think we've seen in the past there when they do have a big run there, have a bit of a pop, they'll maybe wait for a little bit of a 3-wave pullback there. That's kind of the setup I'd be sort of keeping an eye on there. That was number one. Number 8, so no, not number 8, number 4 was WC8 there. So pretty interesting here. I mean, this is still kept going here, Chris. So still pretty robust there. I was even looking through.
Been on this list for months, haven't it?
It has, yeah. It's had a bell there a few times there. Interesting sort of here. Even after going to a new high here, sort of popped up to a new high. It looks like it might have, been a bit long in the tooth there, but pulled back on pretty light volume. Got going again. The volume did come in a bit late there, which would have had you a little bit circumspect. But then a pullback here, no volume of that selling. Another rally here, and then a bit of a pullback here. So you can sort of see this is actually another VCP in here. So you got either 1, 2, 3. Those 2 days here where it tightened up here, no volume, and then pushed on there. That was a little VCP. So these VCPs can sort of pop up here even a bit later on there. So that's not a bad little signal. A lot of volume through there, pretty robust. Again, you get that 1 day selling, but not too much follow through, and then on again here. So getting a bit long on the tooth there, but still pretty robust, the volume. So not showing too much weakness of late there. So couple of things sort of worth watching in here. Just probably apart from that VCP in there, the other thing, which is sort of something I learned from Bill McLaren years ago, was what they call bullish spacing. So when you sort of start to move up there, sometimes you're in a bit of a sideways move, and then you'll break up. Then you might sit on top of the previous high and then go. And that's kind of like the normal building sort of like a normal building trend. If you sort of pop up to a new high, you pull back, and you leave spacing between the previous high and the previous low. So this is our sort of high here. Once it actually broke up here, came back down, it left spacing between that low and that high there. So that's what Bill often referred to as bullish spacing there. So this trend is actually gaining momentum. When you get spacing there like that, that tells you when it turns here, 8, 9 times out of 10, that's going to go to a new high because it's left spacing there. So that's just sort of something to watch out for some of these fast moving stocks here, is if they do pull back on the lighter volume, particularly, oftentimes it's nice if they sit on top, but it's even more powerful if there's spacing there between the high and the low. So there's basically a gap there. Basically, you can sort of look at that, that sort of bar there when you had, although the volume wasn't that strong there, because the spacing there, that tells you can actually sort of move on here, move higher there. So it's just an interesting sort of observation there. But the one thing on going through the momentum scores, and we saw this about, you can probably correct me there, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now, uranium hit the launch pad there in a big way. We had probably 4 or 5 stocks there. I'm trying to find what week it was, but it was.
I do remember you and I were talking about it and trolling through which ones were leading.
Yeah. Look, for me, I sort of I tried to sort of on my break there, I tried to sort of go away light. When I did have a few 10% holdings and a couple of uranium stocks there, while I was long there, and just sort of put my stops and targets in there. So I got sort of hit on one of those the other day. But yeah, I would have definitely sort of geared up a bit heavier if I had not been going away. But been a pretty good trade there. But a lot of those really kicked on there. I think on the list there, we've got RDM, which has had a pretty good move. A lot of volume on that as well. So that's pretty decent there. I think we had Bannerman on the list as well, which is one that I traded. I like to look at that sort of, and there was a little VCP and a little consolidation in the setup here. And then once we had our B-weight, a little B-weight break here, Chris, that's, breaking above here, might have been around the 7th. I thought that was, it's a good little signal. There's some good volume through there too. Look how robust that volume was there. So, thought that looked pretty good. They've all had a pretty good move here now, so probably going to have a bit of a cool off here, but we just want to see, probably these a bit of a watch here now because they've all sort of hit the radar. Everyone's sort of talking about them, so they're probably going to ingest and cool off a bit here. So I definitely have lightened off most of my uranium exposure. Again, I probably would have liked to have traded this a bit harder there. Deep yellow was one that I really liked. That was a little tight, sort of flag in there. Sort of, the whole thing sort of sat on top of the previous high, like we talked about, sitting on top of previous trends there. And then look at that, the first day up here, we had some pretty good volume there coming out of that move, and then we're broken out here. A couple of inside days, but been pretty robust here so far. So, just when you look at the bigger picture of these weeklies, you can see that they can move, they can pop here. So, some people say, uranium's hard to trade. It is, uninvestable sometimes, possibly, but they can trend and can pop there. So, just from a pure technical point of view, it's pretty good. But that's pretty robust volume there. That's pretty robust volume down the lows as well. So, and this whole thing dried up here. Look how light the volume was through there as well.
So in that pullback, it's saying to you there aren't many sellers coming to market. Is that the signal?
Yeah, exactly. So it's held up pretty tight here. This is more of a sideways correction there. And if you look at our weekly chart there, let's say that's a nice little flag there. So good volume through here. Look at the heavy volume through there. And then the whole volume just dried up here. That's what you're looking for. That's that's really. I mean, if I could find this set up every week, I'd be all over it every week. So that's pretty good signal there. But it's had a good move here now. So now you're in that sort of risky phase here. So I've sort of taken most of my sort of heavy positions off here. I've only got really a small positive left there, but I think it's probably due for a bit of a consolidation now. I think, Paladin, I think it's come off the list. There might have been. I think it's actually on the launch pad there, but it's been pretty robust as well. But I mean, if we look through the list there, I think we got EL8, or there's number 28 on the list. That's had a nice pop here. It's good volume. LBX. Actually, that's an IPO there. It's a new company, chemical group there. So pretty interesting one, actually. Pretty early days there, but it is showing a bit of strength there for an IPO. What else did I sort of see there? Number 7. I thought LLI looked pretty interesting. I was actually, in terms of what we just went through with that WC8 and the spacing, you can see here that we've had a bit of a pop here, had a bit of a breather, pretty light volume, and then wow, bang, heavy volume coming again, pull back again. What do we have here now? Got this spacing here. So this is pretty constructive there. Actually sort of suggests that, when you see strong volume here, pulling back a light volume, strong volume again, pulling back a lighter volume there, you get spacing here. 8, 9 times out of 10, this goes to a new high here. So, I did see this one actually was the one that I sort of circled on my list there. I thought it looked pretty good. Just in terms of that spacing there, just trying to learn from these sort of setups here, how they all set up. Number 16 was STP, which I thought was pretty interesting. That's the old Step One clothing, the old, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Bamboo undies. So been in doldrums for a while. I'm not sure I'd be following this longer term or anything, but there was a VCP, nice little tightening in there, little VCP sort of set up in here, and then punched through there. So it's had a bit of a pop here, but probably more of a short-term opportunity rather than a long one. ADA, gee, look at the volume there, Chris. That's
huge gap up, rally, and keeps roaring.
Yeah, it's this one actually. I mean, this looked pretty strong in here. I traded this one a few times in these sort of congestions there, just because it sort of kept building high lows, and then it was all, I love that sort of congesting under the high. And it did have a few pops there. I did sort of trade this one okay here, but ended up having a deeper pullback, broke below the 50-day, but didn't really take out, probably held the sort of height or the previous swing low in place. That's still sort of constructive there. Got a bit tricky in here, but you might have saw a little bit of a, little tightening up here, a bit of a B wave. It could have been, could have been a chance to sort of get set in here. But interesting that it's gone to a new high, again, gone sideways there after the new high, then popped up here. But when you see these sort of big jumps here on the fundamentals there, that's a bit of a lesson there. Sometimes we sort of got to go back and actually, learn these charts as well. Like the closest thing that I sort of remember to that was NEU. Do you remember that sort of had a bit of a game changer there? Sort of again, sort of similar, same pretty robust sort of stock here. Had a game changer there. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 days up here, pretty strong here. The gains after the 4 days, they're a bit more modest, but still continue to move higher here. So that's probably what we can kind of learn from for 88 is that this is pretty strong volume here. Probably the big gains are made here, but maybe this meander's a little high here. Maybe it's sort of, congests a little bit. We've just got to learn those sort of patterns there. So sometimes it's sort of worth actually printing these off or, keeping a book or, anyone who sort of follows William O'Neill has got the big book there of all the, strongest sort of charts there, but even these sort of setups here as well, it's worth sort of, it's worth sort of looking there. I mean, I actually printed off that NEU, and I also printed off the MP1. So I thought MP1 is really, this is sort of like this is almost like an IPO setup there. Sometimes when you sort of see companies that, go through the early stages there and they have that game changer sort of like that's the game changer sort of move there. That's the big news has come out. CEOs sort of got this thing turned around here, improved it in a pretty short period of time. And then you get your little ABC, your little pennant, and then it builds from there. So I personally actually have gone through, we've got the MP1 number 14 on the list there, but this is one to sort of keep an eye on for like newer stocks as well. This is kind of like a bit of an like a new sort of setup there. So when you see that gap up, good fundamental news, wait for a little congestion and then sort of coming into it. So I was watching I might have been Charles Harris, who works for IBD. He likes to sort of, rather than try and buy breakouts, he likes to wait for a little bit of consolidation. So he's sort of so he looks for the stronger stocks, but he waits for them to consolidate and then tries to get a sort of safer entry and then sort of builds there. And then he might sort of, try and build in there. And then once they sort of break above, then he'll add to it here. So he might start with a small position on this pullback, see this tight action. Then he'll add to it on a break. And then, he'll just keep looking for little pivot points. So whether it's the 20-day or 50-day moving average, he loves to see the stocks come back to the 50 and then add to them there. So congesting here. So you can sort of get these sort of game changer stocks there. You can sort of start with this sort of setup here and then build and then add to it. And it's it's that phrase that keeps ringing in my head now. I've really got it implanted in my head. It's it's about picking right and sitting tight. Is really how the big money is made. And if you listen to all the best traders on the planet, it'll often be one or two trades that really sort of paves the way for all the success. All the rest of it's a bit of toil. You'll have a few winners and a few losers there. But might be maybe one trade or might be two or three trades will really pay for you every year, or basically account for all your profits there. So it's about sort of picking right, sitting tight there once we've picked right here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I think ASM was the only other stock on the list that I saw there. Just because I thought this had some pretty good volume here. Pulled back on some lighter volume and was seeing some volume coming again. So volume's not quite as robust the second time, but doesn't always have to be. What's important is the first leg up is good volume. And then as long as the volume dries up here and as long as it's healthy, it's still okay here. So that was most of our stocks there.
Quarterly momentum.
The quality of momentum there. But there's some really good lessons in there. I mean, I would really look at that MP1 chart, that WC8 chart to learn that. Even the LLI, talk about the spacing as well. So, as traders here, we just got to improve there, print these charts off, make some notes, keep them handy there. So when you sort of see the same sort of setup again, you can sort of, look at what happened last time. It will stop you maybe getting out, taking a profit too early, might keep you in a trade a bit longer. Also, if you know it's just going to be a bit of a grind there, then maybe you'll sort of sell a little bit of the strength, but sort of maybe hold the position as well. If it pulls back, drifts back in towards maybe the 20 or the 50-day moving average, that's when you can sort of add to it. So just some really good lessons in that group there. Actually, when I literally printed off about 3 of those charts, made some notes on there, and I'm actually just going to add them into I've got like a little diary book that I sort of put trade setups in there. Just so when you sort of, oftentimes you'll see a setup and you go, oh, I've seen this setup before. Where is it? And then I'll be, trying to scroll through hundreds of charts to try and remember where it was. But if you keep a book, a diary of them, you can go straight to your diary there and I can see these sort of these sort of classic setups here. So just give you the confidence to sort of trade them with a little bit more conviction. Okay, so looking at the Launchpad, got 1 or 2 uraniums in there, which is sort of surprising. Fresca tells you that they probably joined the party late. So I think AGE was like number 11, so probably tells you maybe it's probably the least superior of the group. Maybe the lagger, which we know we shouldn't be trading. We should only be trading the leaders. So things like your obviously Paladin, Deep Yellow, Phantom, that EC8 was a bit of a lead. I think you sent me a list of sort of, I think the top 6 there. I think I traded half of the 6. So I felt like I was in the right stocks when I saw your list. So that's a good sign. So obviously Paladin's sort of still in there, but probably this one's probably led earlier, but probably slowed down here. It had a bit of a jump here recently. What else we got there? ALU has had a bit of a gap up there. Bit hard to trade there, but we sort of know that they'll gap up and then they'll sort of probably grind out a bit more. LYL. Oh, this one was pretty interesting, Chris. Just because this is a big sideways orientation here, so it's like a big pennant sort of flag here. When we see this big, sideways pennant flags here, we've seen it. Saw one here, big one here as well. What we've just sort of seen here is just a bit of volume coming as well. So it's sort of broken, above what I refer to as a little bear wave, little break there. So this looks all right here, actually. So normally...
that's basic. So that long sideways had for the last 4 months or so. How important is the low being above that February high?
Yeah, well, we saw it here. So this is the congestion sign here, the old high. It's basically broken through, pulled back into March, April, left spacing there, just sat on the 50-day moving average, which is nice, and then gone again. Now that high is it's gone impulsively to a new high again. It got sideways there. You might have got interested around here because it come back to the 50-day moving average again, and again, not a lot of volume through here, but it hasn't sort of kicked on. It's sort of gone sideways since then. So look, if it maybe you bought there, you probably might have been underwater slightly there, but probably wouldn't have done too much damage there. But it's, what has done is just gone sort of sideways since then. So you get your little, let's call this a little false breakdown here, this sort of sideways grind. But the main thing there is, breaking above a little swing high there. You probably get a second swing high break as well. But definitely seen a bit of volume come in here. So, definitely want to keep an eye there. Just because, the trend's so robust there. As we know that, we've been doing this a couple of years now, Chris, and these leaders, they continue to lead. And they stay around here for a lot longer than everyone expects, or so yeah, it just looks pretty robust to me. So nothing wrong with that chart whatsoever. 29M was number 10 on the list there. So I thought this is a bit of a watch here, just because although it's still strong downtrend, we did have like what we call here all that volume there. It's almost exhaustive type of volume, and then we saw some healthy volume come in. So that's probably the first time we've got two things there. We've got exhaustive type volume, and then we've got some volume there which is sort of constructive on the upside there. And then since then we've sort of gone sideways there. Might have come back here and made a little false break here. That low is 62.5 cents. I guess it's probably 0.5% lower, 62 exactly. So it just goes back a little false break and then it starts to build here. So this is one to keep an eye on there. I would like to see a B wave break some sort of swing high first before I look at it. But I definitely circled this as one to watch there. They've had a few issues, 29M, which is not sort of not all their own doing, I guess. It's sort of some macro stuff there which has affected them. So definitely one to keep an eye on there, because that's one that could rebuild. APX I thought was pretty interesting as well, obviously with the AI space. Obviously the video's been all the talk here. So the only issue we've got here with APX, I think it reports on the 28th, the next couple of days, and it has reported pretty poorly the last few times there. So that would make me quite nervous coming into reporting season, but do love the AI space here. Definitely is growing somewhat here. And there's not too many AI stocks in Australia of sort of reasonable quality there, but just reporting season would make me a little nervous. But yeah, some okay volume in there. Definitely one to sort of keep an eye on, just because that space is a lot. The other thing on the launchpad, Chris, was a lot of the gold producers as well. So I noticed that your report, that you sent through to me, sort of had highlighted these as, I think, might have been the second or third strongest group this week here. And I did notice that as well. I noticed that PRU, which is on your list, that was showing some sort of strength there, bit of a consolidation there. Might have been Ramelius there. Look at that sideways move there, big sideways orientation as well. Whole thing's tightened up here, corrected pattern. And I saw RSG as well, which is another one did catch my eye, just because it had such big volume on the, there's still that volume there. That's massive. It's a big volume through here. Pull back there, a bit lighter volume. It's already probably heavy, but it has come back to the 50-week there. But just notice that's those stocks there, that sector there, just starting to show a little bit of strength there in what's a pretty weak market. And gold's had a bit decent pullback here. So, I've definitely sort of highlighted gold stocks here this week as definitely a sector to watch, because we're just seeing this market there as, it's just moving through the sectors. Like, it's a really rotational sort of market there. And we're sort of, if you look at through the top 50, top 100 stocks, most of the stocks are range bound, trading these massive ranges, going up and down, on these big wide ranges there, which is sort of typical for
high inflationary periods.
High inflation periods, low growth periods as well. So we get that sort of, so we're definitely seeing those sort of moves. So just seeing that, so it's funny, if if you get out sort of at the break, I mean, even sort of BHP the other day did this, which is just sort of classic as what epitomizes the market here, is that we're just, up here, we went to a slight new high, failed, came back down, went to a slight new low the other day and then bounced from here. It's just, and look at just seeing the range is up and down, up and down, up and down here. That's the market we're in here. So, it's just pretty interesting sort of range here. So just the whole market sort of got that sort of characteristics about it. So we've kind of got to be looking for maybe sectors as well that are out of favour. And we've just seen, obviously spot gold has had a bit of a pullback there. So what peaked in 4th of May. So June, July, August. So, we're probably 3 months sort of from the last sort of peak here. So use a bit of time here. So just interesting that sector. Just a lot of stocks that sort of showed up, showing a bit of strength there. PVH was one that I thought is hanging in there quite, it's more of a sort of sideways consolidation there. So that still looks pretty robust. Not a favourite stock or anything there. I think Silex is on the list as well. A bit of a late mover in terms of that uranium space. So that's probably tells us it's a little bit of a laggard rather than a leader. PWH is definitely one I keep an eye on here because that has, it's had a pretty decent pullback here. Starting to sort of build here now. We've sort of got a 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern there. So got a few high lows. Then that's a corrective decline there. And then now we've got bang, some pretty robust volume coming in here. So this is pretty strong here. So ideally we'd like to see some sort of pause there, some sort of little consolidation of some sort there. But definitely one stock we should have on our list there. I think that looks pretty robust there. So it's a little bit of a funny space in the chart there, but definitely one stock to sort of keep an eye on just because the volume analysis looks pretty interesting. That's pretty much it, Chris. So there's a bit happening there, pretty interesting list there. Mightn't be heaps of trades there, but definitely some stocks to sort of circle, watch there. Definitely some great lessons in this list there. I sort of, again, as traders, sometimes when you're not trading as much there, it's important to sort of keep learning, keep your process going there. You get a, as we get older, I'm 52 now, so memory doesn't get sharp as it once was there. So keep actually writing down your notes. I think there's a lot to be said for writing by hand as well. That's sort of, there's a lot of evidence around, writing down physically, you remember them better. But even just sort of keeping, I try and keep a few electronic libraries and I keep a few manual libraries as well, just so I can kind of revert back and sort of see these sort of setups in the past there and see how they, if I see something again, I can hopefully learn from those in the past as well.
Well, that's a really good lesson. Looking back, keeping the notes, like you just pulled out a chart, was it NEU, and you referenced it to a chart right now and said, well, those two are broken out. It's somewhat similar. I'm using this as a bit of a loose blueprint to know what is possible. And like you said earlier, it's really good that you can understand how much a company can run after a break like that. And that can give you a bit of a more comfort to sit, buy right and sit tight and hold through the trade. And as you were alluding before, some of the best traders, and I know SMB Capital talk about this a lot, whereas your year can be made up with 3 or 4 trades making the majority of your earnings. And if you take out those 3 or 4 trades, you might just be net zero. So having those draw cards, those flashcards, or those charts at reference can really help you just take the confidence to buy right and sit tight, as you're saying. So I think it's a really good lesson in this market. Reporting season, there's so much changing over. You said that the industries are changing cycles, and we're seeing that every day when we're looking at the top 10 momentum themes. They're just changing consistently. But like you've just pulled through here, you pulled out some of the best charts to look at, the great opportunities, and they're definitely still there, even though that whole market's actually whipsawing around.
So definitely. And there's a lot to be said for, when the market goes through a little bit of period of weakness, watching the stocks that stand up the best. That's really, that's showing tide here. I mean, I literally sort of just had, sort of week and a half off, and I had a lot of positions on when I left, and like half the positions probably got stopped out. things like sort of like BHP Mineral Resources there, but I kept them pretty tight. Whereas like, CUV, I think, and the uranium stocks and a couple other stocks have run pretty nicely. So I actually made money while I was on holidays there because I wasn't doing anything. So I got stopped out on a few positions there, kept the losses pretty tight. The things that ran for me ran pretty strongly. And yeah, it was kind of like, just let the process do what the process is going to do. Sort of as, I think of the trader there, Tom Basso, process. So just, it definitely does sort of help there if you just sort of, keep it all contained. They just got to keep sort of going through the whole, and at the moment, we're a little messier at the moment. Probably the conviction's probably hard to get too driven as well. So I definitely sort of scaled my size back there. So normally I'll often get to, I might start with a 10% position and maybe build to 15, 20% up there. But at the moment, I'm probably, probably going a bit lighter there. Probably got a maximum sort of 10%. I think CUB is the only one that I've got bigger than that. But as it stands right now, sort of got a nice position on. I've got my stop at above break even, so I've got a pretty big position there. And if I get stopped out, I still go home a small winner. But it's definitely one that I can still add to potentially as well if we see a little consolidation there. So just going to be a process there. But yeah, I mean, you just got to keep doing your homework too. I mean, that's some of the stuff we're learning here, just momentum and sort of charts here. It's the same with all the cycles, Chris, as well. So one of the reasons why I've been able to sort of navigate the last 2 years reasonably successfully is sort of just going through those cycles in the past, how they've behaved. And, we saw the last growth crunch in 2000, 2002. So go back and look at that period, study that period, look at what happened through there. And that's pretty similar to what happened through this recent period. And then how we came out of that period as well. And then, climbing the wall of worry, all the negativity there. And if you read about those periods, I listen to a lot of trading podcasts and, sometimes there are interviews, from many, many years ago, they're talking about those periods that, everyone's sort of underinvested coming out off the lows. That's just a normal characteristics there. So when you sort of, it might be scary buying some of these sort of like the October lows, but then if you sort of know everyone's scared there and then it starts to move up, everyone's still pretty bearish. That's the normal patterns. That's normal. So if it keeps doing what history tells you what's normal, what it previously does, then you're on the right sort of track there. And just learning those cycles, learning different setups there. As traders there, we just got to keep learning here, keep reading. I mean, even Buffett is more of a fundamental guys. These guys will just keep reading all the time. So just got to keep our sort of knowledge base sort of going, keep the brain ticking away, and just sort of learn your moves. Probably try and narrow your focus as well. So if you're sort of looking for those, we want to try and trade the strongest stocks here, and we're looking for those sort of setups there. So one thing I was sort of starting to warm towards more is that cup and handle setup there, Chris. That's definitely a lot more prevalent pattern in the strongest stocks, and the cup and handle can kind of vary in shape as well. But that sort of setup is just renowned through, all those stocks there. So, it's just keep sort of showing there. So you just got to learn that sort of setup as well, and just keep learning.
That's a great note to end on. It's to keep learning, and probably a good point to point the whole playlist, the right-hand side, where you've talked about things like this in detail, and you're talking about your success in the last couple of years. There's a great report that you do at the start of each year where it's a bit of a blueprint for the year, and you put together all of the cycles and how you kind of expect where the highs and lows may be. And if anyone wants to go back and find those videos in the last 3 or 4 years, you'll find he's been amazingly accurate. So that's one point. And then also where you drill down on the strategies. So that whole cycles videos in the Tuesdays playlist, and then the strategies talking about carbon handles and those other ones, we drill down into some of those strategies, and you've done it just like we have here, talked about it, and some of them in detail. We've put some snippets together. That's on the right-hand side. And then you're also really somewhat active on Twitter. So the whole Twitter handle's on the left-hand side, but we should be calling that X now. So that's over there on the left.
Yeah, I'm missing my tweet deck. You're going to pay for that. So all the little followers I used to follow on there, now I've got to go and search them individually unless I want to start paying some dollars.
Oh, it's a change. It's a brave new world, and the changes.
Right. That's right. I'll get it.
Well, thank you very much, Gary Glover from Dovis Capital.
Thanks, Chris.